We're back below $70 a barrel on WTI as we look for progress in talks, although they're indirect talks today between the U.S. and Iran in Qatar. And the question as to whether or not that will mean oil prices continue their declines. We heard President Trump talk about that in the Oval Office yesterday.
They're going to Qatar. I think they've already left, or they're just about getting ready to leave. So we'll see how that goes. But we're doing very well on that front. But the meeting in Doha is going to be perhaps important, perhaps not.
Let's get to it with Jeff Mason, Bloomberg White House correspondent, joins us now from the North Lawn of the White House as we wait for some news on this round of talks. Indirect, Jeff, is how they're being described. What then are Kushner and Witkoff doing in Doha? Iran says it's in town but not at the table. Who are these two gentlemen talking to?
You just played. Perhaps important, perhaps not. How do you interpret that? I don't know. It sounds like, for now anyway, the president and the administration are happy that any kind of talks are going on. This is part of what was laid out in the memorandum of understanding to stop the war. It's 60 days of negotiations on the nuclear program. But your question is good. What are Witkoff and Jared Kushner specifically doing? Certainly overseeing the technical level talks that could include everything from additional details on the Strait of Hormuz to the nitty-gritty on the nuclear program, which I might remind our listeners and viewers was the reason that the president and Israel went into this war in the first place.
Well, yes, the nuclear program was what they initially wanted to address, Jeff, pretty quickly. Of course, they were faced with the challenge of trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which the memorandum of understanding was supposed to do. But obviously, that has been the subject of much contention in the days since it was signed. What is the status right now in the Strait? And does what Iran is saying about it match with what the White House is telling you and everyone else?
Well, I think that's a good question, too. Certainly the president has said repeatedly that he does not want there to be any sort of a fine system by Iran or other countries, for that matter, that would tax or tariff or put any kind of levies on ships going through the Strait. But that has been one of his biggest political and economic challenges, is essentially putting the genie back in the bottle that came as a result of this war. And by that I mean Iran was not controlling the ship that were passaging through the waterway before this war. Then they learned something that they must have known all of these years, which is that they can. And that's what they've shown since the war came out, and that is exactly what the two sides are negotiating over right now. You asked what is the exact status? I don't have an update on that, other than to just remind us all that over the weekend there were additional attacks between the two sides. So this ceasefire and the state of the Strait, as it were, are all very fragile.
Boy, will there be a third round of talks, if we can refer to these in that fashion? I don't know if they're all equal, Jeff, but it took us some time following the first negotiations with J.D. Vance to learn if there would be a second round, where and when. We're still trying to qualify that today. Will there be at some point a tick-tock or a more predictable path for negotiations?
You know, if past is prologue, Joe, I think it's hard to say that there's going to be anything predictable related to these talks or this conflict. But the MOU, as we were discussing, does lay out this time period. And that raises another question that I would just add, which is, will they have a deal to, a broader peace deal on the nuclear program, on the Strait, at the end of that 60-day period? To get back to your question, the only way to do that is to continue talking. And then to come up with some sort of agreement that both sides agree to. And the timing of that is not uninteresting from a political perspective, because if it's successful, President Trump would have something to flag when he goes out on the campaign trail this fall ahead of the midterms. If it is not successful, then it will no doubt be another albatross over his neck as he tries to make the case for Republicans to maintain control in Congress.